At 0138 local time, 9 Ukrainian FP-1 strike drones crossed 1,700 kilometers of Russian airspace toward Shagol Airbase in Chelyabinsk, determined to put Russia's most advanced fighter jet out of the war for months. The crew flying them sat in a dugout near the border, watching the airfield finally crawl onto their screens after hours of flight. 25 minutes to target. But what the Ukrainians didn't know was that Russia had already powered up 3 Pantsir S-1 air defense systems along the final stretch of the route, and the wave was flying straight toward them. The lead drone was 60 kilometers out when a mobile air defense position dug into a tree line near a rail junction lit up without warning. Tracer fire climbed lazy and slow before it snapped straight, and rounds walked up into the second drone in line, tearing it out of formation in a spray of burning fuel. The FP-1 is a Ukrainian fixed-wing strike drone, roughly 6 meters nose to tail, carrying a warhead built to gut a parked aircraft from 200 kilometers out. It didn't matter tonight. It came apart before the operator could even react. A second gun position further down the route opened up seconds later. That's Russia's cheap middle layer of defense at work. A pickup truck with a heavy machine gun bolted to the bed, useless against a jet, exactly right against something slow, low, and unarmored. Think of them as toll booths on the only road left open this deep in the country. Except the toll is your entire drone. What the Russians didn't know was that losing a drone here wasn't a failure. It was bait. A Ukrainian recon drone circling high above the corridor fixed on the muzzle flash the instant that gun opened up, and a rocket already loaded and waiting did the rest. The truck went up in a fireball before the crew even had time to reload. A gun that stays hidden is almost impossible to find. A gun that fires shows itself for a few seconds, and a few seconds was all the recon drone needed. Like a letter already addressed and stamped, just waiting on the house number. The corridor opened, and the surviving drones pushed through toward the base. But 40 kilometers back, a Russian signals officer watched the whole exchange on his own screen and felt something closer to relief than panic. Every recon drone the Ukrainians flew to find his gun trucks was a transmission, a breadcrumb leading back to whoever was flying it. He hadn't put those trucks in the corridor only to stop the wave. He'd put them there to be hunted, because hunting them meant transmitting. And transmitting was the one thing his antennas had been waiting all night to hear. That antenna array on his truck did one job better than almost anything else in the Russian military. It listened for radios. Every drone has to talk to its pilot somehow, and this truck caught that chatter and pulled a bearing straight to the source, then crossed it against a second listening post kilometers away. 2 lines meeting on a map, and a coordinate for a Ukrainian relay position near the border started forming on his screen. Every transmission is a flashlight waved across an open field, and the operator believes he's the one doing the looking. Rubicon was standing in that field the whole time, watching exactly where the beam started. The wave crossed the outskirts of Chelyabinsk itself, and the jamming hit, all at once. GPS signals dropped out completely, autopilots groping for a fix that wasn't there. Any ordinary drone would have wandered off into a field right here, and for a moment the Russians watching their jammers had every reason to think they'd already won. They were wrong. The FP-1s kept flying arrow straight because they were never navigating by satellite in the first place. They fly on terrain matching, a cheap camera reading the ground, scrolling underneath and checking it against a map memorized before launch. You don't need your phone to drive home from work. You know the shape of your own street. That solved the drones flying to fixed coordinates, but one manual bird still needed a live link back to its operator to confirm the exact aircraft to hit once it reached the apron, and that link was exactly what the jammer was built to eat, which meant the jammer couldn't be allowed to live. A missile screamed in low, and the jammer's antenna cluster disintegrated in a flat orange flash. It had been broadcasting at enormous power to blind the whole wave, and that scream was the one thing it could never stop doing long enough to hide. Somewhere, a Russian procurement officer felt a pain he couldn't quite explain. Back near the border, the relay team keeping the manual link alive had no idea their signal had already been traced. Rubicon's hunt was already moving. A swarm of small Russian FPV drones came in low, across open ground toward their position. Cheap racing quads flown by video goggles, with warheads zip-tied to the front. The team's own jammer spun up to meet them, a wall of noise built to drown out the signal any incoming drone needed to hear from its pilot. It caught most of the swarm. One drone didn't slow down, didn't waver, came straight through the noise like it wasn't there at all, because it wasn't flying on radio. A hair-thin fiber optic cable trailed behind it instead, a string between two cans, and you can't scream loud enough to jam a string. An interceptor drone leapt up and knocked it out of the sky a few hundred meters short. A soldier shouldered a net launcher and dropped a second one into the dirt before it closed the distance. The layered answer, any forward Ukrainian position now lives behind. Interceptors for speed, nets for what's already too close to shoot. The surviving drones cleared the jamming belt with the airfield finally in view. But the last of the 3 pantsir systems, the one held back and parked directly on the base perimeter itself, had been sitting quiet and undetected the entire flight, waiting for exactly this moment. Its radar snapped onto the lead drone at close range, and a missile screamed off the rail, climbing hard before pitching over toward the formation. The lead drone banked hard on reflex, more instinct written into its flight software than any real evasive plan. And the missile's proximity fuse triggered a few meters wide, close enough to shred a wingtip, but not close enough to bring it down. One drone limped onward, trailing debris. The gun crew manning that same pantsir opened up next, autocannons hammering the sky where the wave had just been, and a second drone in the tight formation took a hit and spiraled into the perimeter fence in a ball of fire. 2 drones down in the space of 10 seconds, this close to the target, after everything the wave had already survived to get here. 7 drones left, and the airfield sat wide open beneath them. Su-57 fighters on the apron next to a Su-34, fuel bowsers, ground support carts, and the maintenance hangar that keeps both jets flying at all. This wasn't a base built for a threat that could reach it, and in the dark before dawn, what was left of the wave was directly on top of it. The lead drone nosed over into its dive. In the final seconds, the link to its operator stuttered and cut out completely under the last edge of the jamming. Most drones grow stupid the moment that happens, drifting off into a near miss that wastes the whole run. This one held its line, correcting itself the final 100 meters into the fuselage of the lead Su-57. No operator, no link, automatic target recognition holding a picture it had already memorized all the way through the dive. A human chose the target and handed the final seconds to the machine. The world's worst selfie mode, except the face is a 5th-generation fighter jet and the camera has a warhead behind it. Impact. The warhead tore into the Su-57's fuselage just behind of the cockpit. A second drone followed seconds later and flew directly into the Su-34 parked beside it, fire climbing up through the wing root. A third drone bunched into the fuel bowser sitting between the 2 jets and folded it in half, sending burning fuel sideways across a second Su-57 that was never even the intended target. Alarms finally started sounding across the base, long after it mattered. Smoke rose off the apron into the Chelyabinsk night, visible for miles across a city that had assumed this war would never physically reach it. If you enjoyed this video, go watch our video on how Ukraine destroyed one of Russia's best warships with just drones. Bye for now.